Right. So I'm back. It's been a while. It really has been a while, but I'm glad to be back. Uh, for those of you who don't know, my name is Thomas Price. I just happen to be both host and creator of this drawing thing that I do on Sunday nights called Lines on the Page. So if you've never seen any of the previous videos before, you can choose to either stop this video, go all the way back to the very humble and rough beginnings, or you can just continue on with where you are right now, which is perfectly fine. So I wanted to do a couple of different shout outs and stuff before we get straight into this. Uh, Before we get into this, especially with it being a Halloween special. Of course, first things first, housekeeping stuff. Haven Comics, located at 1871 Slaughter Road in Madison, Alabama. And if you happen to like this video, any other video that we have to do, please remember to like and subscribe. Every like, subscribe, share, commenting on the videos whenever we're going live, that actually does help us out. We're not just saying it just to say it, it actually does do something. It also draws people whenever we do happen to go live with our videos. It draws them in, and people who have never heard of Haven Comics and the stuff that we do, that is where you can find us. And of course, all that being said, if you want to know where you can find me on social media, you can find me through my link tree. And that is where you can find me on basically every major platform on social media, including a couple other minor ones. And also, I have a Patreon, which I will get to that in a second, which does rope into our current video that we're doing right now. I took a basically the majority of the month of October off, partly because I have been focusing on a couple different things. One of them was just trying to um, work on some very long-standing commissions. One of them a bit longer than the other, um, and two, I've also been doing a prompts, not necessarily Inktober, but it basically is called Requiem Reverie. And the whole point of it was basically to kind of do like a throwback to the the serial comics of like Prince Valiant and stuff like that, where they would have a single image, and then they would have like a paragraph or two of text, which tied in with the text to basically tell a story. And that's what I've been doing day by day by day. However, I decided to actually not do one today and just focus on today's video, and we'll get back into Requiem Reverie starting tomorrow. So don't freak out about all of that. So we already have a comment. Hey, hey, David, what is up? Hope you're doing well, and happy Halloween to you. Um, so uh, I'm going to scroll back towards January of this year. Reed Beeman, who has been on the show twice before, basically had sent me a message and was just like, "Hey, I have the story, um, and I think you're the person to do the artwork for." I said, "Okay, what's the story? Give me the pitch." So he's basically said, "Okay, have you ever seen The Burbs?" Like, yes. Have you seen Lovecraft Country? Yes. I'll sandwich the two together, and this is Lilywood. So I'm just like, you sold me. So that is the 30-second elevator pitch. And so basically, he I was busy doing the prompt for February, Femme Fatale February, and I said, let me focus on this, and I will start on the character designs. I'll start on the storyboards and all that stuff afterwards. And he was just like, zero issue. Do your thing, and then we're going to hit the books with it. So I'm like, awesome. So uh, the whole point of this pitch basically is like any comic pitch, is to send this out to several different editors that we had the fortune of basically trying to work contact in relation and networking and stuff like that within the last year or so. And which, after sending it out to a couple different people, so far we've already had one person message us back, absolutely loved it. And so that is one extra step um, towards the goal line that we're trying to get to, which is basically get the stuff, um, picked up, um, and have everything, put together, and continue with the series. This is me spitballing here. I would like for this to be bi-weekly to a monthly, definitely a monthly, but that's just me. Uh, so after a couple different things get edited over on Readsen, which thankfully I didn't have to change anything. Score. Uh, so um, I'm going to show you guys a couple different of the character designs that I had to do for this. So first things first, it is focusing on one particular couple, and like I said, um, it's basically, I guess you could say, definitely elements of the Burbs and also Lovecraft Country. And it is focusing on the main couple right here, Daniel and Mia. Daniel, if I remember his biography correctly in the character, apparently his wife had taken a job, and they have moved to South Carolina, I believe Charleston. Um, and so they, because of just how the economy is and whatnot, they just scored a deal of a lifetime to get a house in a new subdivision called Lilywood. Excuse me. And so she works for NASA and basically is the breadwinner of this. And Daniel, as you can obviously tell from the character design right here, he's definitely a bit disheveled, a little bit on the overweight side. And one of the things that Reed did for the individual character designs, just like, hey, I'm thinking of this actor or I'm thinking of this character. Just physically, not really so much personality. So that was interesting because I'm not a fan of doing likeness, but let's try to steer in that direction. So one of the things that I did for the character designs, especially with Daniel and Mia, because the focus is on the two of them for the majority of the 10 pages of the pitch. So it made sense for me to do a couple different hairstyles that I thought would fit the personality of the character. I wanted Daniel to be in t-shirt, jeans, hoodie. Definitely has a bit of a light beard going on, if not pretty disheveled. And I actually do something a little bit sneaky with my character designs. So I do I guess, the hairstyle, whatever that I want first, and then I do the others that I think would also work. I don't say anything. I don't lure anyone in, but my goal and my, I guess, betting against the house is basically this is the character design that I think would work. And ironically enough, Reed picked the first one every single time, so it's just like it's 4 for 4. Let's go. So did a little bit of a change of his hair and just ever so slightly. Um, but at the same time, you will notice that his the part of his hair shifts a little bit throughout the pages, just because things are getting a little bit crazier. I kind of want to have a little bit of, I guess, a sense of realism to it. So here's Daniel, and here's the character design for Mia. And with Daniel, I think if I remember correctly, he wanted a kind of like an Andy Dwyer sort of thing. And then with Mia, he was wanting what's the name of the actress? Stephanie Sue. I think that's the Asian actress's name. I think. Reed, if you happen to be watching this, please comment and let me know. My mind's just kind of going blank on the names. Um, and then the other couple that happens to introduce themselves at the end of the comic, or the pitch, I should say, um, like typical good neighbors do. Luke is based off of uh, he fits somewhere between I forgot the name of I think it's Matthew Modine's character in Full Metal Jacket and Steve Rogers. uh, yeah, I mean he's military, or former military, I should say, but he is a physical therapist, if I remember correctly. And then his wife Liz, who is pregnant, she's based off the actress Gina Rodriguez. And this brought into a really interesting situation. I have never drawn a pregnant woman before, and it was just trying to figure this out. It was extremely hard. And so here you go. And of course, one of the things that I tried to do, which also her character, she is a nurse. So being around, well, actually, first off, after working in two hospitals and being around a lot of nurses, I have seen how they look, both at work and outside of work. So, you know, loose clothing, kind of sportswear ish, yoga pants, Crocs, yeah, just anything that just to make the person feel as comfortable as possible. Especially the fact that she, in the comic, I believe, is about 8 to 9 months pregnant. So definitely in the final days of the last trimester. Um, so first things first. One of the things that we have talked about as far as the covers, especially with the pitch, and definitely as the issues keep on going, if we do happen to get picked up, is we wanted little homages to movie posters. And however, with this one that we did here, this is actually an amalgamation of two different things that I was thinking about. The first one is Jaws. And what I love about that movie poster is the fact of you see the shark, you see the swimmer. It's a bold statement. And it's just the dread of the unknown, basically. And that is because there is that you know, tying theme in Lovecraftian type stories where it's the fear of the unknown that you don't know, but it's there. That evil is there. I kind of want to do with this now. The other thing is that we're dealing with not just the typical frog monster, but it is a Lovecraftian frog monster per se. And weirdly enough, there's actually like an entire uh, whole, I guess, I don't know. It's some sort of draw to have like frog monsters and fantasy and horror and stuff like that. That I had no idea even existed. And apparently, there's also a podcast which I have yet to sit and listen to any of it, but it's called "The Old Gods of the Appalachia," and it basically is set in I think want to say it's during the Dust Bowl period. Uh, but you've got these you know creatures that should not be, but they have existed in the Appalachia and uh, very old world and Dust Bowl era South. Um, Kind of a little bit unsettling when you think about it, but it also kind of reminds me of that board game called Arkham Horror, which is actually set in the 20s and 30s. So you've got, guys in zoot suits and Tommy guns versus, you know, Cthulhu creatures coming out of vortexes. Anyways, all that being said, so Jaws was kind of the first thing. The other one I wanted to do was also trying to mash in this Jaws kind of thing with one of my favorite comic covers within the last 20 years. It's actually volume two of Wildcats #1, which is done by Scott Lobdell and Travis Charvet. And in that, you actually have Grifter in the background, and then the OG team with their new designs at the bottom. And I thought, you know what, this can work. Have the have the creature in the background, have people up in the front, and it would make sense. Um, which, if you've noticed in um, the thumbnail for the video, that's basically the a slight portion of the color cover of this. If you are following me on Patreon, you've already seen the colored version of this, and it's heavy usage of blues and purples with the background. Um, but one of the things that Reed was wanting to do with the color scheme, so basically, I I did the pencils and the inks. He focused on to screw up the colors and the lettering. And one of the things he wanted to do with the colors was to kind of harken back to, I guess, our personal love of Mike Mignola comics. So that's everything regarding Hellboy, BPRD, Lord Baltimore, um, and other things in that realm. And also, I forgot the name of the colorist who did the recent uh, Gotham PD Year One that Tom King wrote last year. I want to say it's about 4 or 5 issues long, but it also kind of has that uh, muted, flat kind of feel to it. So one of the things I really had to work on was just making sure that um, the line work for this would be fitting for that sort of thing, and that was something I had to think about. So, all that being said, and we have seen the character designs and this cover. I am going to show how loose my storyboards are versus the actual final inked version of this. Um, so this is the storyboard for issue 1, and basically it's just trying to set up uh, this whole thing because there is some monologue, dialogue, sort of thing. But it's basically Daniel kind of narrating, talking about his just a situation of the fear and the terror of being a first time homeowners, moving to a place that they've never even been. We're kind of by ourselves, and if we knew what we knew now, so that means that he is speaking, or I guess speaking in the past tense of looking in the past. So I had asked Reed when I was reading the script, just like, how many issues of this have you already written out? And I want to say somewhere between 4 to 5 issues that he had already have mapped out. So I'm like, okay. So that is basically how it's put out. Now, in page 2, which I'll show later, after I show page 1 in a moment. One of the things that gets brought up is a frog basically eating a fly, and I like that part, but I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a nod to the opening credits of Men in Black, the first film, where you see the bug flying around, and at the very end just goes splat. Um, so I kind of wanted to have a little wink and a nod to that because I've always thought it was interesting as we're going to be seeing this bug kind of floating around into page 2. So here is page one of this. And one of the things that I wanted to do, even though the Reed was going to be doing the lettering digitally in post, I kind of wanted to go ahead and space some stuff out. We did keep the lettering for the Lilywood sign exactly the same, so there was really no changes on that end. But the BJ Horn Realtor and the sold sign, that was done in post with actual type font. So going from really rough idea to a finalized thing, and it's two different paper sizes and how I had kind of gridded off and stuff. It definitely had to make me use my brain a little bit more than I care to. Um, and I actually finished the last 3 pages of the storyboarding literally the night of my cousin's wedding at the end of the park. So I didn't get to start on page one of this until April 2023. So just to give you an idea of just where everything was going and working like a madman, basically. One of the things I also didn't think I was going to have to do was look up actual references of flies and uh, American green tree frogs. So that was kind of interesting to have to do that and see that show up in random advertisements on social media. I'm on to you, big brother. So, um, I actually got to do some really interesting things with textures and layers. So the window that's in the door, I was trying to think about the super opaque and weird texture giant window frames that I've seen before on doors, and I wanted to do a similar kind of effect with this. And of course, it's set at night with page one into page two. So you've got, the street lamps coming down over here, and of course, you're following the fly leading up to the house, which apparently this is the house where Dane and me are moving into. Um, and we see the silhouette of the frog, at least one of the frogs, down here at the very bottom, which leads into page two. If I can get this. All right. So, page two. This is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. Um, so, we see the fly again with the frog, and I wanted to do very much a borderless frame for this part with the fly circling around. Yeah, sounds like we got a fly or a mosquito in the building as well because I can hear some buzzing. A little ironic. Um, so that's going in. Instead of a tongue, it's this fleshy, gooey hand that's coming out of the frog. This one actually took me a while to try to figure out how I wanted the angle of it and stuff like that. And this is also one where I should have extended this frame out just a bit more of a punch. One of the things that I kind of wish sound effect wise, and I wrote it out in storyboards that I wanted the sound effect to be sports. I just felt like that would be the sound of a frog uh, grabbing a fly in midair. So I thought that would be the perfect effect for it, and it kind of makes a person want to go, ugh. So, especially with the splatter goo slime effects going across here. But I don't think that was the sound effect that Reed had chose specifically for this. Um, but another nod to Wildcats issue actually issue two. Um, so in issue two of the Scott Lobdell run, you actually get to see Maul, and it's when he basically shrinks himself basically to this shriveled mass. And one of the things I really loved about the detail of that was all the ripples of skin and the veins and the sinew, and you just saw it. So I really had to think about that and a couple other different um, pieces of media. One of them being the giant god monster thing in Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind. That the this enemy kingdom basically has kind of been cultivating like a bioweapon, basically. Mix of that and Akira. If you know what scene I'm referring to with the arm, then you know. So definitely taking bits and pieces of this and just trying to think and map out how I want this gooey, fleshy mass uh, that isn't a tongue. That's also larger than the actual frog itself to come out. So there's definitely getting into the realms of horror to a degree. So uh, now with this, we lead into a really interesting section of, and there's still a bit of a narration happening. We lead into sorry, not issue three, page three. So in this part, it's basically moving day. Everyone's trying to get everything put into the house. So you've got like an entire moving team that's happening. And one of the big things that I want to do is trying to figure out the placement of all this, especially the fact of with some of these pages, Reed was really pushing the whole Dave Gibbons thing, which, if you do not know who I'm talking about, he is the artist who did Watchmen. And Dave is really big on having 8, 9, 10 panels in a page. Um, I could say that Daniel Warren Johnson kind of does the same thing, but with him, he at least puts in a splash, uh, if not like a double page spread uh, that paces everything a bit together, and it isn't as wordy. So this and a couple other pages that you'll see are definitely going to be nods to Watchmen. Uh, one of the things I wanted to do was also whenever I'm introducing these characters and Reed can figure out who is who within the storyboard is to change up the color of each character. So just kind of Power Ranger did to a degree. So any character who wasn't a major character was going to be black. That sounds really bad, but I'm just thinking about it in terms of everyone uses lead that just happens to be the color black. So it just made sense for uh, NPCs and stuff like that would be that. Daniel was red, Mia is blue, Luke is yellow, and Liz is pink or purple, one of the two. So that was just my mindset. Oh, and the dog. I forgot about the dog. There is a dog named Oliver. He is a rat terrier mix of some sort, and he is either orange or yellow. He's orange. That's what it is. Um, so basically, just having to put these different colors here, there, and everywhere, just so I can figure out who is the focal point of the characters and who is basically, I guess, in the background, the NPC, if you want to look at it from this point of view. So here is the actual page for that. So there's a lot of chaos that's just kind of happening with everyone moving into the house. So you've got movers talking to each other. You've got Daniel accidentally stepping in a nice little puddle deposit that Oliver had left on the floor. Mia's talking to Oliver, and now we've got the introduction of a pizza delivery uh, person that came in, and is trying to figure out the whole situation. And of course, kind of catches Daniel in the bad moment. One of the things I wanted to do about the pizza kid, as you can obviously tell, teenager, gawky. I wanted him to be like the redheaded step kid that no one likes. And so I was just aiming for this kind of Pixar looking character, basically. So what's really bad is that I'm also basing him on a person that I've seen working at a uh, fast food joint that I'm not going to disclose. There is a very similar person that works at one of them, and he just happens to have that kind of smirk about him. So that was the first person that just kind of popped in my head, and that's why I just decided to roll with it. Uh, so whoever you are, you have now been immortalized in this page. So one of the things that caught me off guard with doing this page within the storyboarding was the fact of whenever I hear people use the word living room and den, especially in the South, it's almost interchangeable, whereas up north, it's two separate rooms and should be looked at as two separate rooms. And I actually had to message read about that because at one point it sounded like Daniel was basically yelling from across the house to talk to whoever it was. And so I had messaged Reed. I was just like, "Hey, is there like an actual floor plan to this place, or am I going to have to come up with all this?" So he goes, "Oh, yeah, I actually do have one. Let me go get it." So when he did, I was able to figure out here, there, and everywhere. Now, here is something that is pretty obvious. Aside from the borderless panel right here, with the silhouette of Daniel and Mia, you've noticed that out of the uh, for 8 panels, only one has a background. And there is a bit of a reason behind that. And one of it is when I pull this up, you'll see all these word bubbles. One of the biggest pet peeves of mine when it comes to reading comics is seeing artists put so much into panels and not leaving enough room for word bubbles. And one of the things that I did here is I don't know why I'm moving my cursor. It's not like you guys are going to be able to see it, but if you look at the video or at the middle of your screen, you can see where I've tried to put word bubbles sometimes over the panel box itself. And one of the things that you kind of need to do when especially with the first panel with a very busy page like this, is that it needs to be almost in a zigzag fashion because we are Western readers. I say this, and there's probably going to be someone from the Middle East or Far East that's going to be watching this video. It's just like, oh no, we read from right to left, in which you are correct about that. But for a Western reader, especially in America, we read right, left to right. So it makes sense for everything and not just a single panel, but just panels themselves, the page itself, to go, left to right, zig down, left to right, zig down, left to right. So it's basically a zigzag pattern or just a bunch of Z's, in which case it'll make you fall asleep. But so that was definitely one of the things that I really had to sit down, think about, plan it out. This is not. if I was writing the story, this is not how I would do it. I'd probably paste this out in 2 pages, have it as a double page spread. And of course, I've told Reed this. He has heard me gripe, but um, it's definitely not the way that I would paste out a page like this. I would definitely have it as a double page spread, um, and let everything kind of breathe just a little bit, instead of having it all crammed in one page. But this is the part where whenever you're doing a collaboration between different people, you do have to step back, think about the bigger picture, and work within it. Unless there is a not really so much a creative difference as there is a ethical difference between you and who you're working with, then by all means stand your ground. Um, but in this case, this is a collaboration project. This is something that he's had in the fire for a while, and I wanted to try to put the best iteration of this possible at the time that I was given. So page 1 and 2 were done in April. This was done at the end of April and inked at the beginning of May. And now we're going to go into page 4. If you guys happen to have any questions, because I can see that there are several people watching right now. If you have any questions about anything, as far as techniques or materials that I've used for any of this, please ask. I will happily answer it. So page 4, this is where we get into a situation where I have to really think and figure out facial expressions and try to work in that. If you want a book that talks about facial expressions and kind of pushes it to almost the nth degree, and this is one book that I will take to my grave as a book that is infinitely better than How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and that is Making Comics by Scott McCloud. You can find this book anywhere. Books a Million, Barnes and Noble, Second and Charles, Amazon, your local library, if they just happen to have a section where you can check out comics. Um, this is a book that uh, definitely tells a person. It's not, like college text or anything like that, but it is definitely something that if you were teaching a college course on how to do sequential panels, that is the one book that should be taught out. And I have like maybe two hills that I will die on. That is one of them. And it is a mountain. The reason I am stating this is because in Making Comics, there is a section that talks about the range of human emotion, and McLeod, uh, references a comic that he did called Zot. And in Zot, each character was based off of a individual, excuse me, an individual type of emotion, and that was their focus. And so he puts out a grid. And so if you really kind of boil down to it, there's really four main emotions that every human being has. But then there are a sublet of other emotions that if you kind of put it together like a circle diagram or a Venn diagram, it all kind of overlaps each other. So you have to figure out, uh, is this person in pain or are they in agony? Is this person sad or are they in grief? So I mean, there are different ways to portray certain stuff. One of the things that does happen in this is that there are in the dialogue there is moments of like quick snarky humor, and Daniel kind of being put in a moment where his ego ends up getting, you know taken down a peg. um, so in this case, Pizza Kid kind of pulls one over him, and one of the things, this kind of goes back to the whole Watchmen thing. Uh, if you ever read Watchmen, you'll notice that Dave Gibbons likes to use uh, the same character drawn exactly the same way. Almost every uh, if he's doing like a sequencing, he'll use like the same face in like two or three panels, and there might be like a slight deviation in terms of like they're going to, I guess, another type of emotion or something like that, or something happens to cause the face to move a different way or whatever. Um, they actually make fun of this in the comic Invincible, where oh, I just forgot the name of the main character, Mark. Mark goes to a comic convention to see his all-time favorite creator, and had mentioned something about, man, it must be like a lot of work for you to do the, draw the same character exactly the same way in certain pants where it's just like, no, I actually kind of copy and paste, and that saves me time before I work on whatever. And they play into that with copy and paste the same panel to show this like pregnant pause, basically. Um, so, anyways, tangent aside, uh, typically, if you're doing this traditionally, you would have like a light box and tracing paper, and you would actually do the same thing. You would draw it normally with one panel, and then with a light box, move it over to the empty panel and draw it again. That's how you make that duplication. I don't have a light box. So I basically had to make sure that I drew it uh, simple enough that I could possibly try to reproduce it again as close as possible. Um, this isn't the first page where I do that. There are others. I also had to reference myself a couple times, like with the wallets. That's something that I've never drawn before, and that took me a while to figure out. Um, this head moving guy, I kind of, for some reason, there's this guy that shows up on my Instagram reels where I wish I could remember his username, but he always does these like bright, happy emotions or whatever, and then you'll see like the metal vocalist him with like an actual song, just like interjecting. So I kind of thought about him whenever I was drawing this. And he's kind of a bigger guy, so it just made sense for me to think about him when I was doing this. Uh, this part right here with the last film was really interesting, simply because I'm trying to put together the perspective grid of showing one side of the house, which is actually leading into the kitchen. The lights aren't on. I want to say it's about afternoon, so it was just like, well, try to determine how I'm going to have the light source in it. And this gets into a really interesting section where it's an unwritten rule. It's called "When in doubt, black it out." This works fantastic if you're doing noir comics. It's another thing where you're trying to do moments that aren't considered noir, and you're trying to apply that. That gets really difficult. So I had to really sit down and think, even during the storyboarding, how to pull this one off. And so it was definitely one of those things where I just kind of sat and thought about it, just like, well, if it's getting into the late afternoon, the sun's setting a certain way, so it would make sense for a certain part of the house, even with the lights off, shadows would be casting. So let's just go for it. So that's what I did here. Okay, so we're going to get into page 5. if you just happen to be a person who is a bit on the squeamish side and do not like creature feature horror or anything like that, or you are underage, this might not be the part for you. So, parental advisory. That's the case. 'Cause this is where we're getting to the beginnings of the fear. So, page 5. I did this one in May. Um, this was really interesting. So we've got a particular point of view where we're showing panel within panel, and I wanted to do this whole borderless thing because it's this part where, which also the reason why I did not continue on with the black over here and over on this side is that when you look at comic board, there's guidelines in terms of what can bleed over and then what's going to get cut off within the printing process. So that's why it does not extend past a certain area. So I wanted to show in Reed's description of the text, he wanted to show whenever Daniel is walking into the master bedroom that it's almost kind of like a sequence thing. One of the things that he had talked about was the Daniel Aha's, or I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. Yeah, Daniel Aha. He did the Hawkeye comic, which the graphics of that were used in the Hawkeye TV show. Which, if you've never read that comic, highly, highly recommend. There are moments in it where you see. Going to use this one for instance. There's a moment where Hawkeye is trying to go through a fire escape section, and he would draw like the fire escape, but then block off the panels, so it shows him kind of moving down in the area. Bruno Redondo did a similar thing in some of the more recent issues of Nightwing, and I forgot the issue number of this, but it's one of the most sought out and infamous ones that he has done, where it's literally one continuous panel, but it's spread across. I want to say like 20 pages. So not doing that, but we wanted to do something, or at least Ree was in the script and the direction of it is that he was wanting this kind of continuous sort of thing where you get to see Daniel walk across from the beginnings of the master bedroom into the master bathroom, where apparently the pizza guy had left the pizza on the sink. So, uh, as you can see, the head mover guy is moving to the opposite side of the hallway while Daniel's going in. And so I had to figure out with the blueprint to create a top down view of this and to map it all out, leading into the master bathroom. And we see the pizza. And one of the things that I wanted to do with the whole pizza situation was the fact of pizza companies have logos and stuff like that, and one of the things I wanted to make sure was not uh, accidentally copy an existing company logo, which is extremely hard, just because we're in the 21st century and there's going to be some overlap. So I thought about Pac-Man. I was putting together this logo, so it is a bit of a nod to Pac-Man trying to chop down pizza flies. But I wanted to do these little it's not really like an exclamation mark per se, but it's definitely something that just kind of draws your eye to it rather than having like an arrow pointing down. It's just kind of like a ding, there it is. So trying to draw the eye to the pizza boxes, and Daniel's about to bend over and pick it up. Now, this is where we're getting to the Dave Gibbons thing again. No light box, and I had to approximate doing the same panel 3 times, but showing um, water and bubbles forming, and which in the sound effects, the faucet itself is like kind of like gurgling and shifting just a little bit, and so when it pops, Daniel's name gets kind of like eerily. spoken through the pipes. Um, which just kind of leaning back to this, the whole question mark thing, leading to that. That's where the sound effects things kind of get started. One thing that I've never really done is sit and thought about how to draw bubbles forming, and so uh, that was definitely something that took me a while to sit and figure out. And this is moments like this in horror where it's just kind of like the lead in to you don't know what's about to happen. And that's something that I wanted to use in great effects, and that's part of the reason why, uh, with the whole when in doubt, kind of black it out kind of situation, I thought of myself. It makes sense whenever we're pushing into this, the difference between the, I guess, the moments that can be considered slice of life is to not have these black borders or black spaces in the background, and then the parts where we're leading into the horror is when things start to get dark, and that's when you have the the blackness in the background. So that's why you see this hatching gradation kind of going into this area right here. Of course, this would be the outside of the house, but it leads into the horror, the dread. And that's something that I don't really see very often in comics when it's leading into that area. Sometimes it would just go straight into it, um, and it does kind of take away from the possible slow burn. But one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting is when doing the bubbles, I kind of wanted them to look like eyes. And I've noticed that whenever, this is going to sound really dumb, and almost kind of like method acting, but I tried to create some bubbles coming out of a soap dispenser bottle, and was kind of looking at it and how to make it work. And I kind of noticed that whenever you're looking at bubbles forming, especially the bigger that they get, they kind of have this, just kind of thought about eyes, and they're it's happening and then it's gone the next moment. So that definitely helped within the close up of this. And I love the fact that the when the bubble bursts, it kind of bleeds into the outside of it. So thought that was definitely interesting. Okay, so page 6. I'm going to show the storyboard for this real quick. So this is interesting because it gets into the situation of where yet again I'm having to do a black border, but I'm silhouetting it with the faucet, and again I'm having to do the Dave Gibbons thing by repeating the same panel, but still building up into that moment of dread. So get that one out real quick. Page 6. Yeah, I see that the drawing cam is actually kind of blocking off a little bit of that panel, so I'm just gonna pull this out just a little bit. Okay, so the hardest part was trying to figure out exactly what kind of effect I wanted to do to kind of create the dread. I didn't want to do speed lines in the typical sense. Uh, so I kind of looked at stuff that Junji Ito would do, and even Guitar Miura, where there would just be this kind of like weird radiation of some sort. I'm not even sure that's the right adjective or description for it, but I thought that was kind of interesting. And of course, with the faucet, uh, shifting and stuff like that, that's when I started doing some quick motion lines and speed lines with that. Um, because it's kind of going all over the place, and Daniel's kind of having to protect himself because he has no idea what is spurting out of the faucet. So now the bubbles are ceasing less to come out from here, and now they're coming out from the actual sink itself. And again, leading into the eyes, and there's a frog coming out of it, and more frogs coming out of it. And again, with the Lovecraftian thing, there's a frog with a face instead of a tongue, and an eye within the face itself. And that was one of those moments where I didn't show that in the storyboard with Reed. I did show that there is the frog there at the very bottom, but I just quickly drew it in there. Um, but I did not tell him that that was going to be in it. So when he actually saw that panel, he texted me back and goes, "Oh my god!" So I'm like, "Yes." Um, so it's definitely interesting, and you can see that the frogs are also kind of blending in into the water and the bubbles, and the eyes are also kind of melding into the frogs themselves, and it does bring in a moment of horror for Daniel. And this was something with both of the faces. Again, with Making Comics by Scott McCloud, and also the comic book guide to inking, two fantastic sections when it's talking about light sources and also implementing it with facial expressions as well. If you find the right one, it will work in its best effect. And one of the things about shock and dread and fear is that the, I guess, this kind of moment where Listen Shadows kind of coming down this way, and more, I guess, what I should say is that the light source is coming in from the bottom, going up. So that sort of thing is one of those moments that usually you would see that a lot with a lot of the creature feature stuff from um, Universal horror stuff, Hitchcock movies. So you see that a lot, and that was something that just made sense and implemented into it, which leads into another panel break with this. And you've got all these frogs coming out with the what kind of looks like a broken sewer line heading straight at Daniel. And he's basically breaking the pizza boxes, trying to shield himself from all of that. But I love the fact of I get to draw these frogs. They're just kind of like flipping and flopping, and one's already on the pizza box. So that was definitely interesting. And pages 5 and 6 and a little bit of 7 definitely felt a little bit more in my element of just being able to do this and kind of push it and have fun. And that's one of the big things that escapes whenever you're working on projects. All right, so that one's done. On to page 7. You get this brought back into realization, and the head movers kind of checking in on them, and as you can notice, very expression, one that I've been known to use and draw quite often. And again, we're using the kind of the shadowing and the shocked face kind of thing, and the completely jacked up pizza boxes. And as you can notice, the hair, it's not parted the same. It's shifted over, which that was just one of those kind of like, well, it really makes sense. It's logic, right? But it's comics. Logic is out the window, you know? So that was definitely something that I just quickly did because it made sense at the time, and wanted to bring in the whole gradation because he's having an internal monologue that's kind of happening, and we knew that it was going to block itself into the darkness before it goes back into uh, the next page where he's downstairs talking with Mia. So how do we rope in this to the fact of we just had this shocking 2 pages of we don't know what the hell's going on with the plumbing, and oh my god, Lovecrafting and frogs are speaking to me out from the pipes. Uh, to we're back to reality and none of this has happened. It's a clean bathroom. I'm not wet. What's going on? My pizza boxes are messed up. So the very end, I put the eyes of the frogs right here at the very bottom. I know it's super tiny, but it was a very conscious decision, and it's one of those like less is more kind of moments. So that is what I've done right here. And now we're going to go into page 8. So the previous 3 pages were done in May. Um, page, actually, hold on, make sure. Actually, pages 4 through 7 were done. Uh, actually, no, take that back. 4, 5, and 6 were done in May. For fact, 7 was done in June. 8 was also done in June, as well as the others. Um, this was one of those moments where I had to take time off work in order to finish inking these pages and do some revisions with pencils with the last 2 because they're kind of pivotal sort of moment. Um, Page 8 is actually kind of interesting because we're getting back into the whole slice of life thing and the interplay between Daniel and Mia, which is different than how you saw them act in page 3. It's a bit more a moment of understanding, moment of, I guess, grace extended, uh, with just the situation and Daniel just kind of looking like he has just he's stressed out, looks like a lack of sleep. And I wanted to show that with the close up of him slowly trying to eat the pizza. Something I've noticed in comics is whenever you've got characters eating, you don't often see it. Very, very few times do I ever see. I mean, you see plenty of characters, having a beverage, but like without making it to a comical thing, just like actually having a meal and you see the characters actually eating, you hardly ever see that. You see it a lot in manga. You don't in even in French comics, but you hardly ever see it in Western comics, especially big two stuff. So one of the things that I wanted to, I guess, implement, which was in the scripts, but one of the things I really wanted to think about was how do I draw a person that looks like he is about to give up and show him trying to eat a slice of pizza, even though he looks like he's not hungry at all. He's lost all appetite, but he is still going to eat this slice of pizza. So, kind of had to use myself a little bit as a reference, and there's nothing wrong with that. Life in and of itself is a ongoing reference, so don't let anyone tell you otherwise. So this was actually kind of interesting. And again, harkening back to the Dave Givens situation, multiple panels, reoccurring panels that are almost the same, but a slight variation between the two. Again, no light box whatsoever. So I had to make sure that specific lines were almost exactly the same as the one before it, which is not easy, um, especially when you're not using a light box whatsoever. Or the fact of this is traditional, could have just copy paste in post and tweak things in post, but was not the case. Um, and so again, just trying to leave section of space for the word bubbles to fit in and trying to find those moments. Um, so that was definitely one of those things that I really had to sit and think about. Um, really love this panel right here. With just that moment of reassurance between Daniel and Mia. So you can see that interplay of situation between the two of them. So I really had to think about the facial expressions, the moment, really trying to make it more grounded slice of life sort of stuff, which is not what I would consider my strong suit, but it was definitely something that I had to think about. All right, so page 8, two more pages left. So if you have made it this far, congrats. All right, so page 8, or sorry, page 9. Um, this was actually done in July, so I think this was the month that I took that time off to finish inking stuff. So bit of humor that kind of happens between this, which you get to see Oliver just a little bit more. Oliver being the rat terrier. Um, this was interesting because it's just like Daniel having to say something to Mia real quick. Oliver is up here trying to get Daniel's attention. Daniel having to talk to the dog like you typically would. In this case, the dog was wanting uh, food or something, attention. Um, so you have that going on, and someone knocks on the door. And so, how do I draw a dog that is having to quickly turn his head and bark his head off? So that was one that I really had to sit down and think how to how do I do this? It took me at least 30 minutes to find the right angle of a reference pic of the same breed of dog doing the same thing. So whoever it was that did that particular picture, kudos to you. Tip my hat off at you. Thank you so much for helping me out with that. Um, so you see that there's someone behind the door, so there's a bit of a silhouette. This one was interesting with these next 4 panels. So we're going back to the whole David Aha, Bruno Redondo thing, where you've got characters breaking within the panels, and also you still technically have one long panel, but it's separate panels within it. Uh, it's hard for me to really state what it is, but that's what we got going on with Daniel trying to get to the door. Mia's trying to stop Oliver from running amok. Daniel's trying to rush to the door and double check and make sure that she's got Oliver with her. So that was one of those moments where it's just like I really have to sit and think about this. And of course, you've got word bubbles that are happening here and then down here. Like, how do you make this work? And that was definitely one that took a while uh, back in March just to figure that out. Quick water break. So, the last 2 panels of the page are, well, I guess you would kind of consider the John Romita panels, I would say. Uh, and this is in reference to the first appearance of Mary Jane Watson, where you actually see her. Um, I wanted to do a bit of a nod to that, and if I remember correctly, this was before Romita. When I had done the storyboard of this, it was well long before Romita had passed. So in some ways, this is a bit of a nod to that particular issue that he did in Amazing Spider-Man. So this is the introduction of Luke and Liz, who are the next door neighbors. And again, you've got the silhouette of the character, and then boop, there you go. There's the reveal within the next frame. In the script, it was not stated to do a silhouette of Luke and Liz in this. You just know that they're there and they have to be shown. So Reed was definitely pleased by seeing that when I had sent the storyboard to him. And I was just like, this is with that particular panel on this page, wanted a bit of a nod to the Mary Jane reveal. So it was just like, see what you did there. So that is done, and then of course leads into the last and final page, page 10. Now, I want to show the storyboard of this. So this is what I was talking about, having all the characters sketched out in different colors, and of course the word bubbles, because you've got two couples that are having two to almost three different conversations at the same time. So there's like overlap and stuff happening, and my trying to figure out having to do the right facial expressions to match the dialogue that's going to be happening right there. But can I make this visually speak without all the dialogue as well? And this is also one of those moments where you kind of have to pull back with the background stuff and just let the pictures do the thing that they're supposed to do, which I feel like is something that some artists, regardless if they're professionals or amateurs within the current market, should definitely think about doing more. Some of them do, and some of them have figured it out after, several issues of stuff underneath their belt. And there are some that just don't figure that out, and they just want to put in all the detail. Uh, so throwing this back out, uh, traditional 9 panel Mr. Gerard's Dave Gibbons thing. Um, if you have read any comic that Tom King and Mr. Arts have done, it is a typical 9 panel comic. So Mr. Miracle, uh, Vision, uh, Strange Adventures. I want to say there was one more, but yeah, those in particular, you can definitely understand what. So, um, again, with the facial expressions, had to figure that out, and characters having conversations, across from each other, with each other, and to have the facial expressions match whatever is going on. This was interesting at the very bottom because this is where Daniel and Luke kind of have their first bonding moment of sorts. The wives have already hit it off, and they're just away they go, sort of thing. Uh, so this area right here, I forgot exactly what I used. It was a movie of some sort. I just can't remember what it was, but it kind of had a similar circumstance where you had two different couples meeting each other for the first time, and then the husbands are having a conversation off in the background. Uh, and I kind of wanted to have that same sort of thing happening. Now, what's interesting with the very last panel right here is while you do have dialogue that does get filled up right here, um, this is something where I thought originally doing it as a borderless panel and dealing with just a silhouette would be strong enough, but uh, it was just one of those moments where I just kind of thought to myself, let's just leave it like a 9 panel, have the box, but then have the silhouette meet the border of the box itself, and that is where it stays. I'm going to add in the last thing so that you guys can see the final cover. Going back to this. So, like I said, this is the black and white version of this, and here is the colored version of said cover. Uh, so, I know there are a couple of other different montages, or sorry, not montages, uh, homages of and tributes to other movie posters and stuff like that that Reed and I have spitballed back and forth. Um, and we're hoping this thing gets picked up. We're hoping that this thing uh, definitely gets off of the ground floor, and we're able to put this thing together, which means I will be, if it does happen, then I will be a very busy person within the next couple of months, as if I already haven't been all this year. Um, but it's definitely an interesting thing to look back on. Uh, and like I said at the beginning of this video, this isn't the typical type of video that I would be doing, but it's definitely something to show you guys something that I've kind of been holding close to my chest that some of the Patreon viewers have already seen beforehand and for several months now. Both the character design, yeah, literally starting from scribbles of character designs all the way up to the final colored and lettered products, and to see this journey that I've had to go to with just 10 pages alone, and everything else I've had going on this year thus far. Uh, it's definitely given them a good window into all the stuff and the hurdles that I've had to go through to get this thing put together. And I did want at some point to show the rest of you guys all this without some, paywall behind it. Um, and so I figured that with the, I guess, decently good reaction and reception that we've gotten so far, figured that this video might be a nice little glimpse and window so you guys can see everything that's been happening with me on that. So, all that being said, I'd like to thank the few of you that have been tuning in into this. Thank you so much. Um, to definitely want to give a shout out to both Mike Wesolowski and Zach Freeman for buying some of, well, claiming and buying some of the pieces this month from Requiem Reverie. Uh, if we're being honest with that particular thing, and the reason why I'm not doing today's video regarding it is a twofold situation. One, I felt like this was a lot more important, and two, I just felt like it would have been, I guess, gilding the lily to a degree. To just continue on doing stuff regarding that. And I felt like this would be a nice pause and glimpse of something else completely different. With all the stuff that I've been having to do with that, and of course, it still retains itself. It's horror. It's original art. Why not? Um, and but yeah, definitely want to shout out to both of those guys for getting that, because if we're being honest, trying to do an entire month worth of uh, pictures and having story and world building of stuff that I've kind of had bouncing around in my head for the last year, and finally getting around to actually doing it this October has definitely been interesting, because the amount of comments, messages, text messages regarding Requiem Reverie has been very positive. Um, and so I would say uh, within this video, and you've heard it first here, that there is a very high probability that that story or some iteration of it within lore will be used for an actual standalone comic at some point of time. I do not know when. It definitely won't be this year, but it's definitely something for you guys to consider seeing. And I definitely am going to push more into that particular thing. It may keep the same title. It may end up having a different title. Um, so we'll see. That being said, thank you guys, and I hope that all of you have a great Halloween. I know some of you have already done trick or treating and stuff like that this weekend already. Some of you are still going to continue on doing it up until Tuesday, I believe. Yeah, Tuesday. So that being said, I hope you all have had a great weekend, a good spooky start to your weekend if you're watching this. And we are going to end with the typical housekeeping stuff. Haven Comics, located at 1871 Slaughter Road, Suite F in Madison, Alabama. Store hours. We are open on Wednesdays through Sunday, typically from 12 to 6. Uh, unless you are coming in on Saturday, then our store hours are 10 to 6. And then on Sundays, it is 12 to 5. It's a mouthful to remember, but just Google us, look us up on Facebook, and you'll see all that there. Please remember to like and subscribe. Every like, subscribe, comment, share, uh, all that fun stuff. It helps us out immensely. And we're not just saying it just to say it, it actually does. And if you want to figure out where you can find me on social media, you can find me through linktree.com/tpriceartworks. If you just happen to be on Facebook or Instagram or the thing that cannot decide whether if it is Twitter or X, just put in at tpriceartworks, and that is where you can find me. I'm also on a couple of other different platforms as well. Uh, Threads, Hive, Blue Sky, Mastodon, and pretty sure Tumblr is still there if it hasn't been deactivated yet. And of course, Patreon as well. I am with just everything that's been going on with this month. There really isn't any actual rewards that is happening within the month of October, but we will be going back to business as usual starting in November, which is very soon. So there will be new rewards, new prints, and all that fun stuff happening very soon on Patreon. So that being said, I wish you all a very good night, and I will see you guys on the next episode because we will be going back to business as usual on Sundays. See you then.